and welcome to the podcast of the Prison Officers Association, the UK's largest professional union for prison, correctional and secure psychiatric workers with 33,000 members. In this episode, POA National Chair Mark Fairhurst discusses the hopes, expectations and priorities for both himself and the union as we hit the ground running in 2025. Well, with me is Mark Fairhurst, National Chair of the POA. Happy New Year to you, Mark.
Happy New Year, everybody.
There are a number of things that are occupying the union's kind of collective attention. Pay, the open estate, an interesting early day motion from Kim Johnson MP. Perhaps if we deal with those first and then look at the bigger kind of strategic objectives for the new year. What's the latest on pay?
So we have got, at the end of this month, oral submissions over pay, where we go through our written submissions and justify even further why it's a good idea to give prison officers and OSGs a significant pay rise, because quite simply, the attrition rates are still concerning. Most of the people who resign from the service are within 2 years of joining the job. So that's 50% of resignations are from people with 2 years in the job, and 34% of resignations are for people who are in the first 12 months of the job. So the cost to the taxpayer from that alone runs into tens of millions of pounds. But if we could compete with other public sector bodies and keep increasing pay and keep getting above inflation pay rises, that will help some way to retaining staff and convincing people that actually a career as a prison officer is financially benefit. At the moment, although we're getting there slowly, I still think it's an unattractive salary, and I don't think it's competitive enough for the dangers that we face on the front line and the responsibilities that are heaped upon us. So that's where we are with pay. Hopefully, we can get it back on track and we can get a pay award round about April, May. I know that pay review body are keen to get it back on track. It's been delayed consistently by governments in the past. So hopefully we can get it before summer recess in July, which seems to be the trend at the moment. We hit July, the government go on the summer holidays, and then we get a pay rise around about October every year. We want it back in April.
So recruitment and retention and timeliness are key issues there. Now, just before Christmas, there was a letter from HMPPS suggesting changes to the open estate and when prisoners would be moved onto the open estate. And then just after Christmas, the government seemed to say, well, we don't care what HMPPS have said, we've made up our minds already. And the situation's kind of confused. What is the situation on the open estate as you understand it at the current time?
So at the moment, because of the early release schemes, we have got a bit of breathing space in the closed estate, a couple of thousand vacancies. So we should be okay up until round about the middle of this year. But what they've recognised is that there's a lot of vacancies in the open estate, and we've always struggled to fill those vacancies because obviously in the past, and it was in the past, we had really robust criteria for prisoners who access the open estate, rightly so. And we did thorough risk assessments before transferring them. Now they introduced a few years ago that if you're in the last 3 years of your sentence, you can access the open estate. And this new piece of, well, it's not legislation, piece of policy, I will say, is that we're going to relax the criteria even further and allow prisoners who've got 5 years left on their sentence to access the open estate. Now, I know the problems that's going to cause. My members who are working in the open estate know the problems that's going to cause, but it doesn't matter what objections we raise or what concerns we raise. The decision has been made by the government that they're going to do it. And we know why they're going to do it. They're going to do it because they've been forced into a situation where probably by the end of this year, we will be rammed to the rafters again, and they'll be looking at how can we create space. Well, this is one way of creating space, but the creating space with the wrong type of prisoner in the wrong type of estate, we haven't got sufficient staffing levels to deal with the problems that are going to arise.
And is this absolutely a done deal, or is there some sort of parliamentary check or oversight that still needs or still could take place?
There'll be some sort of governance they have to go through, but it doesn't require a change in legislation. It's just more of a policy change. So it'll go through due process. How long that due process will take, I don't know. They're pretty keen to rush it in. And this all ties in with the sentencing review by David Gore, who's recognise that the open estate do a good job and we don't use the open estate enough. Well, the open estate is one of the parts of the prison estate that actually does work, and it always has, because we've always had the right type of prisoner in the open estate who we give a level of trust to because they're working in our communities and then coming back to prison. That's all going to change drastically, I fear, if we allow people with 5 years left on their sentence to access those conditions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think the warning bell has been sounded very, very clearly by yourself and the union on that. And then finally, in terms of what we start the year with, there's an early day motion from Kim Johnson, one of the Liverpool Labour MPs, about insourcing prison maintenance.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of people listening to this podcast who are relatively new in the service, and prison maintenance was always in-house prior to 2015. So those of us who were in the job before 2015 will remember the good old days, and they were the good old days, where if you had a small repair that needed doing, for example, the toilet in a cell's not working, or the window needs replacing because it's been smashed out, or the sink's blocked, you could just phone your mate in the works department and say, do us a favor, can you come over and have a look at this problem? The lad can't use the toilet, it's not working. And then, an hour later, the works department would visit that cell, fix the toilet, and off they pop, the job's done, everyone's happy. And furthermore, back in the day, we used to have prisoners who maybe had been convicted of a crime, but they were tradespeople before they came in. So you might have someone who used to be a plumber or an electrician or a bricklayer, and they used to go round with the works fellas and help them do these repairs. So they were keeping their skills going. And we had prisoners who wanted to learn a skill, who were taught a skill by the trades. So that worked all perfectly. And then in the wisdom, the government thought we can get value for money for the taxpayer, privatized it. We all know about Carillion, which is one of the firms who got the contract. They went bust. Amy in the north, they cut staff to create profit. And then there was loads of things that were out of scope. So, for example, the works department always used to tend the gardens and cut the grass on the football pitch and stuff like that. That was then out of scope. The works department always used to deal with pest control. That was then out of scope. So then you've got to pay people extra to do all these jobs that used to be in-house. So it actually, when it was audited, they discovered that it wasn't value for the taxpayer. It was actually cost them something like 3 times more than it was envisaged. So it's been a complete and utter disaster. And my fear now is there's several people, including Lord Timpson, who've stated that we're going to tender these contracts because they're up for renewal, but the public sector won't be allowed to bid. So my job at the moment is not only to support Kim Johnson's early day motion, is to convince our members to write to their MP or email their MP and say, can you support this because it makes sense? I've gone that now, try and convince Lord Timpson to come round to our way of thinking and say, look, outsourcing, it's not suitable for this situation. We want it in-house. We want it brought back to what it was pre-2015, because what it was back then worked really, really well, where, as you know now, £1.8 billion worth of outstanding repairs is not good value for anyone.
I mean, it's what a record of failure of that particular policy for sure. And listeners, if you want to lobby your MP to support Kim Johnson's early day motion, you can find a link and all the details in the notes to this episode of the podcast. Now, that's what's on the stocks at the moment, Mark. But if we look further ahead into 2025, what are the main strategic priorities for the union?
Yeah, so we've got some long-standing campaigns which will continue until we win them, really. So 68 is too late, lowering our retirement age. That's been going on since 2015 when our pensions were changed. The door is still open with this government. They are receptive to sitting down with this union and trying to broker a way of reducing the retirement age of prison officers. What that's going to look like, I don't know. But we've had indications that they're willing to discuss it with us. That is a massive positive. Let's see what comes of that. I can't promise nothing. And with any government, my attitude is always the same. It doesn't matter what denomination they are. I don't believe a word they say. I don't believe the promises they make. Their actions speak louder than words. So I always hope for the best, but I expect absolutely nothing, because if I expect nothing, I can't get upset when nothing happens. So the door's open there, which is good. I look forward to trying to reduce our retirement age, and every politician I speak to agrees that You can't work in that environment until you're 68. It makes no sense at all. So that's ongoing. The longest standing campaign we have, which is now over 30 years old, is the right to strike. The government have already told us that they're not going to give us our right to strike back. So we're going to see them in the European Court. That's where we go next with that one. And then I guess the usual stuff, we want a decent pay rise. We'll keep fighting for pay rises. Safety, staff safety at work is non-negotiable. We will always back our members when they act if they feel they're working unsafely. So we will continue to press that as well.
I think all the things that we've spoken about, both the things that are immediate and the things that are longer standing campaigns, they really emphasize the need for a strong union, and a strong union is comprised of individual members and reps up and down the country, up and down the countries of the UK. What would your message be about why now particularly it's important to have a strong union and for the maximum possible level of union membership?
I think 2025 for me, I want this to be the year that awakens POA members. And what I mean by that is I hear a lot of horror stories from branches and members that their working conditions are not safe. They're being forced to work unsafely because some governors are really vindictive and malicious and got no empathy for staff. There are a lot of good governors out there, and I know people who are working for some fantastic governors who listen to what's being said and act and are determined to look after staff and keep them safe. But that's very few and far between, which is quite sad. So when I say it's an awakening year, that's what I mean. I want people to start standing up for themselves and enforce their workplace rights. So, for example, only last week I was getting contacted by a branch where they'd had quite a lot of violence on the wing, and they knew their wing was full of weapons, drugs, mobile phones. And the staff wanted to lock down that wing and search it so they could get rid of all this stuff, or at least satisfy themselves that it wasn't there and they'd had a good look for it. And the senior management team refused to allow them to do that because they were concerned about driving the regime and getting people unlocked, even though violence was rife. Well, it's easy for me. I've been in that position before. So when people are saying, oh, it's all right for you, Mark, sitting there doing this podcast, we're on the front line. I've been in this position and I've backed my members as a branch official when they said, we've had enough. The wing's full of weapons. We're not unlocking. And there was a lot of pressure on us from senior managers. You've got to unlock. And we refused. We said, we will unlock when we've searched this wing because we know there's a knife missing and we haven't found it yet. We won. We won because we stuck together, because we stayed strong, we stayed united, and we did the right thing because that is the right thing. Work safely. So that's what I want. I want people to work safely, and I want members to read a legally binding document called the Health and Safety Protocol that explains what action to take if you feel you're being ignored and you're not safe at work. So I want people to be more proactive. We will always back it at a national level. It goes without saying, no matter what, we will always back it. We'll never back down. I want our prisons to be safe. I want our members to work safely. I want them to know what their rights are. And I want them to be more proactive. Be more proactive with your MP. Contact your local MP and say, are you going to support our right to strike? Are you going to support a low retirement age? Because coming the next general election, if you want our vote, you're going to have to back us. And if you don't back us, then we'll vote for someone who does. Let's start being a bit more proactive. This is your union, not my union. I'm proud to lead you, but this is your union. You tell us what you want us to do for you. But please, don't be scared of saying no to people in a suit. You join this job and you confront rapists, murderers, drug dealers, violent offenders every day and challenge them. And then when someone comes along in a suit who's a rank above you and tries to force you to do something, all of a sudden you go silent. Don't be silent anymore. Let's be, the voice of 2025. Let's be proactive. Let's make our workplaces safe. And if you're not happy at work, force your governors to listen to you by sticking together, staying united and do what's right for you, because I'll never back down.
Mark, thank you very much indeed.
My thanks to Mark, and it certainly promises to be a busy year for the POA. You can keep up to date with the latest developments at poauk.org.uk and, of course, from your local POA representatives. And if you are not yet a union member, there is no better time to join the vast majority of your colleagues by signing up today. Full details on the union's website or your local POA rep. Thanks for listening. We hope you have enjoyed what you have heard and will join us for the next episode of the POA podcast. Thank you and goodbye.